I think the first thing we learned when we got here was that we're not an island. And we knew that ahead of time.
Yeah, we knew that.
We knew, when you look at the map, you're on the mainland. It's very clear that you're on the mainland. But coming from someplace else, you kind of think of it as like Vancouver Island-ish.
Well, an island, because you got to take a ferry from Horseshoe Bay to Langdale. So as soon as you're getting on a ferry, you're thinking, I'm going to an island. And even Vancouverites kind of believed sometimes growing up for a long time that they're not even looking at it further, that they're just getting on a ferry. So they're going to an island when they're going to the Sunshine Coast. Not an island.
Not an island. And the first time you refer to it as an island, you will immediately
regret it
and aggressively be corrected that it is not an island. There are 3 main areas that aren't covered by the fire department, but then also up and down the coast, there are little neighborhoods and streets and regions that are not covered by the fire department. The 3 big ones are Gambier and Keats Island, and then a stretch of road from YMCA Road all the way to the Port Mellon Mill.
Yeah, so YMCA is just off in Langdale. So from Langdale to Port Mellon, there's a section there not covered. And so the case is that a lot of the fire departments, well, they're all volunteer fire departments on the coast. And with volunteer fire departments, you can only cover so much area. So then there has to be a boundary about how far they can service and look after.
And unfortunately, then Port Mellon falls out of that. What that would mean is that if you own a property in that no coverage zone and it lights on fire and you phone the fire department doesn't come.
Only if there's a life at risk. If there's a life at risk, they will come. They will make an exception and come. But if it's just structural fire, they won't come. And if it's going to go into the trees and into the forest and grow bigger, then that's the Wildlife Fire Protection Service that kicks in for that.
What this means is that if you're planning to move to the Sunshine Coast, either as a tenant to begin with, or you're going to buy right away, you need to talk to your would-be landlord or ask your realtor, what is the deal with fire coverage, fire department callouts in this area?
And as far as insurance, you can get fire insurance coverage. You'll just likely pay a premium. Something else about the coast and the different communities is the naming of the communities. So there's obviously like Gibsons and Seashelt and Pender Harbor, but there's also like smaller communities next to those places that are also called Gibsons. So for example, Grantham's Landing, if you mail a letter to Grantham's Landing, you're mailing it to Gibsons.
Langdale's the same thing, that it's its own little community with its own school. But if you mail a letter to Langdale, the address you write on the envelope will say Gibsons.
When you're looking on realtor.ca, you might see a property that comes up that says Gibsons. So it may be Gibsons proper, the town of like about 5,000 people, but it may also be in Grantham's or in Langdale. So you'll just have to kind of look at the map and look at more specifically where you're buying.
Yeah, you'd be forgiven for thinking, oh, Gibsons is Gibsons, but man, it can make a huge difference.
Yeah, and Seashelt is the other good example. It encompasses a lot of surrounding areas. So like Wilson Creek is under Seashelt, Twanik, Sandy Hook, Davis Bay, they're all a Seashelt mailing address. In BC, there's a land transfer tax. Alberta, we didn't have to deal with that there, but in BC there is. So what that means is when you purchase a property on closing, you have to pay a one-time tax. And there's a few exceptions, like if you've never owned a owner-occupied property anywhere in the world, and then there's all these stipulations on it that you're a BC resident for however long, then you don't have to pay the tax. But likely you'll be paying the land transfer tax. And for example, on a $900,000 medium home price in Gibsons, that land transfer tax is $16,000. There's a calculator online if you want to look it up, what your land transfer tax is for the amount that you'll be paying in a purchase.
We'll put a link on our website that takes you to the calculator and some other things with the province of BC that explains all the land transfer tax goodness. The other surprise to us when we arrived on the coast was natural gas isn't as prevalent as it was in Alberta. Maybe that's just our sheltered upbringing in Alberta that we relied so much on natural gas. Maybe other places in Canada, it's the same way. But in Edmonton, it gets bleeding cold in the wintertime. So you need a gas fireplace to keep yourself warm. That's not really as big a deal here on the Sunshine Coast. Lots of places have electric heat or, some kind of alternative way of keeping warm, even like a wood fire stove.
A lot of them have wood furnaces, wood fireplaces.
You can have gas brought to a property, but depending where you're bringing it from, it can be like anywhere from thousands to tens of thousands of dollars. So that's something else to ask when you're renting or buying, because your bill could be substantial in the wintertime if you're heating it with electric heat.
Yeah, especially for bigger homes. And so then, and it's a bit different because like with forced air furnaces, like the air will move around a little bit more. But when you just have like a radiator electric heat, then the air is not moving around as much.
That's right. It's easy to live with. It's not a big deal, but it's just something to have on your radar.
Mm-hmm.
The next item on the list is something we have called road eggs.
Road eggs are eggs you can buy on the side of the road. Often they are found in a cooler with a little jar that you just buy, what is it, Honesty?
The honor system.
The honor system. You put your $5, $6, $7 in the jar and you grab yourself a carton of eggs. And it's great.
They're farm fresh.
Yeah. So there's a few places that you'll get to know on the coast that you'll drive down this side road and then you'll see right at the entrance, there's just a cooler sitting there and you're like, oh, maybe there's road eggs and maybe they're all gone and maybe there's still some for you.
That's right. So yeah, we can do our grocery shopping sometimes on the side of the road. When we came to the Sunshine Coast for a week to see if we liked the area or not, we had this cute little cottage not far from the water in Hopkins Landing that we really enjoyed staying in. But at night, it would get so hot. And we would go to open the windows, but there were no screens in the windows. And we thought, oh, it must have been renovated. Somebody must have stolen. They must have got wrecked. Something must have happened that there's no screens in the windows. So we just cooked in this little cottage for the week that we were here.
Because we thought if we opened up the windows that mosquitoes would come in.
Yeah, and flies and everything else. But it wasn't until we moved here and we were talking to people that that's not really a thing.
But there's not very many mosquitoes here. Like if you're by the water, maybe sometimes a little bit, very periodically, but no mosquito problems.
I find even by the water, like if it's down by the beach, you don't ever really see mosquitoes. If there's standing water, you will. Or if you're on a hike up the mountain or, something like that, and there's standing water, you'll come across mosquitoes. But very rarely do we really get attacked by mosquitoes.
Yeah, so you don't really need screens. You can keep your doors open, windows open. You may get spiders coming in because there's a little bit more spiders here. So
and bigger
maybe
spiders.
So I do. We use screens here. I have screens and I just use them.
That's right.
So when I moved out here, it kind of just happened that I realized I don't really need high heels and makeup so much. I don't know if it's the area or what it is, if it's just more chilled here. But yeah, if you're moving out here, leave the makeup behind. You don't need to cake it on. And then the high heels, they're just not practical. You're either walking to the beach or walking to work or like have a trades job, or you just don't need high heels.
Pretty casual.
Casual.
Yeah.
Even like ties, like even if like you get all suited up, then you're just like, oh, you must be from the city. You're not a local.
Or you're going to court.
Yeah, you're going to court, I guess.
Yeah, what did that guy do? He's wearing a suit.
So it's funny because I'll go paddling with my paddling buddies. And obviously, like, yeah, we're totally cash because we just got our paddling outfit on. And then we go sit for coffee. And then you'll see somebody show up and they're like, oh, they're from the city.
Number 9 on the list of things nobody tells you about the Sunshine Coast is that you're going to have all kinds of interesting neighbors when you move, specifically deer.
Oh dear. So the deer are very pretty, very fun to look at. And often they'll find a favorite spot in the shade near your garden or your backyard so that they could just hang out and they sit in the shade and you get to look at them. So they're very pretty. But the other thing you learn is that you need to have a fence around your garden because the deer will really like your garden.
They like everything. They if you fence off your garden, they'll eat your trees. If you fence off your trees, they get into everything. They're very nice. And it's lovely, I think, to see them. It's still kind of crazy to see animals wandering through the yard now, even after, 7 or 8 years. But yeah, they can be pests and get into things. So you've got to be aware to, like Val's saying, close off your garden, put a fence around your yard, something like that, if you don't want them coming in and eating you out of house and home.
Yes, and you'll see cedar trees kind of have an interesting trim to them. They're like trimmed to a certain point. And that's the deer eating the cedar trees. So that's what that weird trimming of cedar trees is on the coast.
Because they can only reach up so high on the tree. Yeah. So it makes a funny shaped cut in the tree.
And of course, driving, be careful driving. You could hit deer. And then the time of year where they have the little fawns, then that's even more dangerous. So you'll see road signs like neighbor or manufactured little private road signs that people will put and say, drive slowly here, that there's a fawn or there's a young family.
We could probably do a whole video about deer.
Oh, dear.
With those 9 things, you're now smarter than we were when we moved out of Alberta and into BC. If you're from the Sunshine Coast, maybe leave a comment below and let us know what's something that it took you a little while to figure out.
And if you've moved from one place to another place, maybe there's something interesting that you learned about the new place you moved to that you want to share in the comments with the rest of us.
But that's it. Those are the 9 things we learned. And thanks for watching.
Thank you.